Pessoal, boa noite, sejam todos muito bem-vindos ao nosso 27º encontro, mais uma vez virtual, mais uma vez em parceria com a Rede Bsb-EConomics, com a Juliana e com a Flávia. Estamos aqui, Guilherme e eu, da C3, Comunidade de Ciências Comportamentais. Muito obrigado pela presença de todos nessa gelada noite de maio. E hoje temos uma convidada muito especial, é a professora Magali Delmas. Lembrando que o evento de hoje vai ser realizado em inglês, então eu vou apertar a tecla SAP. Desejo a todos um bom evento. Lembrando que ao final da apresentação a gente vai abrir para perguntas. Vocês podem abrir o microfone, vocês podem fazer perguntas pelo chat. Tá legal? Um bom evento a todos e vamos apertar a tecla SAP. Hi everybody, welcome to another meetup. We have a very special guest this evening, Professor Magali Delmas. She's a professor of management at the UCLA Institute of the Environment and the Anderson School of Management. She's the director of the UCLA Center for Corporate Environmental Performance. She is also the president of the Alliance for Research in Corporate Sustainability. That's the organization that serves as a vehicle for advancing rigorous academic research on corporate sustainability issues. Her research interests are primarily in the areas of business strategy and corporate sustainability. She has written more than 90 articles and award-winning book, The Green Bundle, Pairing the Market with the Planet. I first knew about Professor Delmas' work at 2019 BSPA, when she presented about sustainable consumption. And for me, it was a great example of the intention-action gap. But I'm sure I don't want to spoil anything. So Professor Delmas, thank you for joining us and the floor is yours.
Thank you so much, Artur. I'm so excited to be here with you today and to share some of our research and to hear from you also. I would love to kind of see what type of project you guys are working on. And so I'm excited to present some of the work we've done, and I think I'll share some of my slides for a little while about this book I published, which is called The Green Bundle. So I think in Portuguese it's El Pacote Verde, right? That's the translation. And see what you think about this perspective. Thank you, Artur, for the presentation. I'm no more the president of the Alliance for Research on Corporate Sustainability, but I was for a little while. It's actually, I'm talking about this to you because it might be of interest. It's an organization that brings people who are interested in sustainability and business and sustainability together. There is an annual conference. This year it's online, but it's in a couple of weeks. It's ARCS. I'm just going to put in the chat. That's the acronym of the organization, ARCS. So if you're interested, there are plenty of really good papers on sustainability related research. And it's on I think it's June 22nd that we have the main conference. So okay, so El Pacote Verde. Let me show you this share my screen, okay, and then I can go to the. See how I do this. I'm using a different computer than normally, just in order, because my previous computer was making a lot of noise and I want to do the slideshow. Hold on a second. Something is happening. Just 1 second. Sorry. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so this is a program that started with the idea that information can be really powerful as an agent of change. And so the question is, information is a big word. How do we kind of frame information in a way that gets people to change their behavior and adopt, purchase green product or adopt green practices such as energy conservation? So this is the idea, like in soon we'll have, and I think it's more and more possible, we'll have, an app that will tell us for everything we do, kind of our impacts. Right now, we don't really know yet too much. We are not completely sure. We know that, for example, eating meat has a big footprint, but how much really? How much compared to what we do when I'm using this computer? Of course, if I had to come to meet you, it would have been definitely more of a footprint than just speaking, on via Zoom. But you see the point where kind of when deciding on different types of behavior, it's going to be important, and soon we'll have all this information. So how do we present it to people so that they change behavior? Because information alone is not enough. It needs to be in context. It needs to be related to motivations. So this is starting with the, and Artur was talking about it, the kind of the gap between what people say and what they do. And if you ask most people about the environment, and all the surveys are very, very similar. This is one that we conducted that says if things continue on their present course, we will soon experience a major catastrophe. And what you see is 73% agreeing with that. So people agree there's a problem. You see this demonstration in, about climate, teenagers. I mean, I know you have a question about teenagers, but like the young, kind of the generation, like marching and everybody, I think, is on most people. I mean, we still have some people who don't resist that, but the majority of people agree with this, that we have a problem, something to solve, right? The question is that when you go to the market for green products, it's still very, very small. So the question is, how do we go from this 73% to this, from this 10% to this 73%, right? How do we kind of bridge this gap? And basically the thesis here is that it's not going to work out if you rely on people who are making sacrifices and are just kind of the dark green people, right? It's not going to work out. You need, this is a tiny minority. You won't succeed by just focusing on this segment of the population. So, what I'm saying here is that, you do have people consume a lot of energy in driving Hummers, and some people who are very full. But in the middle, there's just a lot of people who are just convenient, what I call convenient environmentalists, meaning that they want to do the right thing, and I'm really one of them. I want to do the right thing, but there are moments where it's just inconvenient. And I think when I say convenient environmentalists, these are people who say, I can't do it because, and there are plenty of excuses, right? Most of the excuses are about the price. It's more expensive. And a bunch of people also think, you can see here, it's of lower quality. So I'm not willing to pay more for a product that's of lower quality, sorry. And so that's a big excuse. I think if we remove that excuse, we will have, makes a lot of progress. There are some people who say, also, I don't really understand what we're talking about, what I should do. The information is unclear. And that's about convenience here. It's not easy to find the products. There is also the lack of trust in the products, and you see a lot of issues with greenwashing. Volkswagen and the Dieselgate being one clear example of that, where they actually told us that diesel was clean when it wasn't. And so we have all of this, and as you can see here, fewer people are going to admit that the environment is not really what they care about. So most of the excuses are really on the practicality of this. So the thesis of the book and of what I'm presenting today is that what you need to do to get consumers and in general people to change their behavior towards something more sustainable is to give them not just the public good. Public good is the environment, it's good for everyone, but also some specific benefits that are private, that are for them. So you need to bundle the public good with private benefits. And this would be product that would have higher quality, that would be status associated with purchasing the product, health, better health, money, maybe saving money, or emotion being related through emotion to the product or the behavior. And that's when you bundle, when you do this bundle of public good and private benefit that you get to see really a big change. If there is any trade-off between the environment and one of these attributes, for example, quality, if the product is a lower quality, even though it's good for the environment, it's really, really hard to find consumers willing to purchase them. So that's kind of the main, the main theme. And so if I go to each of them to give you some examples, and after that, I'm happy to, get, you can ask me actually questions during my presentation. I'm happy to respond. I don't really see the chat, so that's the only, only issue. So maybe Artur, you can let me know. But
sure.
So quality is the first one. So if you think about, Tesla and electric cars, most people, when they purchased a Tesla, didn't really buy it because it was greener, but because of the quality of the car, right? So that's one example where you bundle high quality with, electric new technology, and you see kind of it works. So people purchase it because of this additional, quality attribute. In fact, Tesla does not communicate about sustainability in their marketing campaign. They never really talk about this. So, and I interviewed people, and then we went through the kind of the website where people kind of put comments on why they purchased the car, and you can see here it's like the no trade-off car. It has everything. Not only is it electric, but it's better than a Prius, quicker than a Porsche 911, more cargo than SUVs. So it's kind of like, and you have 300 miles range. It's kind of all the benefits that you would like. Acceleration is incredible. It looks good. It's beautiful. There's a computer in the car. All of that makes it a product that people want to purchase almost regardless of the environment. So that works, right? For, of course, at a premium. Quality is something that, we also, we did some research looking at quality related to wine. So what we found is that wines that have that use organically grown grapes, so these grapes without chemicals, tend to be associated with wines that have higher points from the experts. So experts, wine spectator, wine enthusiast, wine advocates. When you buy a bottle of wine and they give you a 90 or kind of a rating. So what we did is we looked at 74,000 wines in California. We looked at those that have organic certification, and we looked at the ratings that they get. And we saw, and that's what it's saying here, the certified wines get 4 points higher than the conventional wines. We did the same thing with French wines, because of course I had to do this in France too, to see, because people say, oh, maybe it's just California. So let's see what happens in France. We see the exact same thing. With actually a little bit, it's 6 points higher for this kind of green wines, wine that are certified organic or biodynamic. So we see this association, and when you talk to the winemakers, they tell you yes, because when you grow grapes without chemicals, they tend to have are easier to work with, and they have a different taste. Also, they might have some more sugar because the vine produces less. So you have maybe higher sugar content. So they have, the winemakers are actually telling you, it makes sense. That's actually the reason why they're doing it. They care about the environment, but they're actually doing it because they think it relates to quality. The consumers, on the other hand, were not completely sure, had a little bit of misgivings about organic and biodynamic wines. But our research is showing that there is this connection. So that's an example where you really bundle, when you use sustainable practices, you get to a completely different type of product that might have additional qualities. So then in that case, it would work well. So there's a boom now actually in Europe with this type of wine, and maybe in Brazil too. I don't know what the situation is in terms of organic wines. So quality is different things, right? Quality is, you have the example, it could be performance, could be durability. Durability is associated with sustainability. So Patagonia is an example of a company that produces clothes that are more durable, kind of the opposite of the fast fashion movement. And they have this idea that to make these clothes actually durable, they also need to be having more simpler clothes, different material, that is associated with quality. So it's quality, durability. Functionality could be another quality attributes. For example, some of these, I would say Airbnb, and that can be, some people can completely disagree in terms of whether it's greener to do this, but Airbnb, when you are sharing your apartment and you're using the same resource for more people, you could make the case that it is a greener option. But people are not gonna get to Airbnb because it's greener. They are getting to using Airbnb because it's easier, it's more functional, it's easier, it might be cheaper, it's actually nicer maybe in some cases, and so you have made it more convenient. Comfort might be associated with, so that's an example of a company that does organic mattresses that have a higher comfort. So you have all of these different ways to kind of associate quality and sustainability. And I'm not saying it's this green bundle strategy is just about communication, because you need the underlying kind of product, the product to have this underlying quality. It's not just about talking about it. It's actually, it needs to make sense for the consumer. The second element of the bundle is status. So status is really about kind of showing off, your greenness. So this is an experiment that we conducted at UCLA in the dorms. We provided information to students. These are in dorms, so in each room, students about their electricity usage in real time, and what we say at the appliance level, meaning information about heating and cooling, air conditioning and heating, plug load, so everything that's plugged in the wall. Imagine a student's room where you have your computer is there, a mini fridge, maybe a microwave, and then the lights. Okay, so we gave them this information, real-time energy use, compare them with some others, like they see, oh yeah, this is your current usage of other rooms, and then we have this, and so the idea was, now they know exactly what they are consuming and they can make adjustments. So we're very excited about this, and especially we had to equip these rooms with sensors, because they were not, so each light had the sensor, so we knew when it was on. So we had 34 rooms like this, heating and cooling with the sensor, so it was kind of an operation to set this up at the room level. The result of this was nothing. So the students basically did not change their behavior. So we were very disappointed, because it was a lot of work. And what we could see is that they went to the website, because each of the users had a specific website dashboard, and so we could see they were going to the website, they were looking at the information, and we did that for 3 months, and there was no change, 0. So people said, but the students don't really pay their electricity, so it's kind of, maybe that's the reason, right? It might be, but it might be that this information was, and that goes to the idea of status, was not visible to the public, right? So they could see their room, but nobody else could see if they were, what they were using, because it was actually anonymized. So what we did, the next stage in the research, was we decided to kind of make this information public, and we had every week we had this that's a low tech approach. Every week we would provide a green dot here for those who were in rooms that were consuming energy below average, and a red dot above average. Okay, so very simple. We just put the stickers every week, and this is located near the elevator. We send that by email also, so they have this information now. Everybody knows, they know each other, right? So they know who is in Summit 225C, they know each other. So this actually suddenly, same information, okay? We just put these stickers, suddenly these guys, they wake up, and this is effective. And we see a big change of, forgot, it's like 19%, something insane, sorry. I don't have the number here, but it really suddenly worked, because the information became public, and people were saying, we're competing, I was walking in a hallway and I got high fives, you know, from my friends, or I was wearing a sweater and turn off everything to kind of get to that green point level. And so the students were actually pretty nice in the sense that they never complained about this. They thought it was kind of more of a competition game. But, you know, you could see, so it's a little bit, they could have complained in some ways because we were shaming some of them here. But it did work. Maybe I should start. I see there are some questions here. So
yes, Professor Sebastian is asking if before this intervention, if there was a call to action for the students, and if so, was there also a control condition?
Yeah. So I forgot to describe actually the experiment. So basically, we had students who had this information, like the one that you saw, the website, the dashboard, and then we had a control group that also we observed them, but they didn't have access to the information. So basically, when we compared we compared these two groups, and then after that, the way we did it is we had still some people. We had some people who had the treatment with the public information. So we added. So what you're seeing here, we added this. That was an additional treatment group. We kept the two other, the control group and the first treatment that I showed you. So this was an add-on in terms of, we could compare them. Okay, now you have the public and the dashboard. What does it add to the dashboard? And we had this public here and the control group. So we in fact had three treatments in reality. I don't know if I'm clear, but we had. The control group was basically those who didn't see the information, and then we had two treatment groups, one with just the dashboard and another one with the dashboard and the public information. So that's kind of what the experiment was, and then that second treatment, this treatment lasted 3 months, and then we removed the information. So we had another 3 months to see if the behavior continued in the last 3 months. So we followed them 3 months afterwards. So overall, it was a 9 months experiment. And then at the end of the 3 months, what we saw is that actually those who changed their behavior continued to change their behavior, which was interesting because it lasted at least 3 months. And the reason why this worked, I think, is because they changed the settings on their thermostat and then they didn't change them again. So it's like it was just they touched the technology, they didn't touch it before. It was kind of actually weird thermostat in these rooms. Changed that, never touched it again, but it was kind of now on a different trend. So I think that's what explains the change here. More visual. So I'm reading the now. This is also much more visual than the other that could also be affected besides status. Yeah, you're right in a sense that the design of this is a little simpler than the previous one. You're right. So we told them, we kind of gave them more the actual threshold. Now you're good and you're bad. Before we didn't have this such an injunctive norm. So we're kind of being much stronger on that. So I agree. This could be another way to something maybe to check next. So this is an experiment. There's another kind of real-time experiment that happened in Beverly Hills when there were basically the utility sent letters to the biggest users of water, and the Los Angeles Times did a Freedom of Information Act type of thing to request these letters. And then what the Los Angeles Times did is they posted the usage of these biggest users in the journal, right? In the newspaper, online. So that's an example. Amy Poehler, who is an actress, I don't know if you've seen any of her movies, or that's kind of what was posted about her, in terms of she was using 2,800 gallons a day. The average use family is like around 300, so it's way more. And so that's kind of happened in real life. And what happened is once people were exposed like this, they did reduce their water usage significantly. Not because they care how much, it was not about money saving, it was about their reputation. Before they didn't mind paying, they had the money, but now it's a different type of problem. And so they would respond things like, well, I had a few leaks I didn't know in my yard, I went to check them, So that was actually pretty effective as a policy practice. It's not, possible everywhere to shame, and I don't recommend shaming in general, but we know it's effective. I'm more for the positive side. So moving on to the next element of the bundle, that's health, and I believe this is the strongest element. And this is, why the, organic products, in general, people use them because they might taste better, but also because it's better for the health of, people using them. So this is why the organic market, the market of organic products, doubled in the last decades. Very successful because people think then they're using, they're kind of getting products in their system that will make them healthier. Won't have all the chemicals that might cause cancer. So that's very effective. When you can make this connection between health and the environment, I think you've made a big link that's helpful. So this is another experiment we conducted again about electricity usage. So it's kind of a follow-up on what I described to you before, but instead of having treatment that are related to status, we decided to test health versus money. A lot of people say, yeah, your first experiment doesn't really work because the students are not paying money, for the electricity. It's part of their, the fees they pay for, a yearly fee to be part of to live in these university apartments. What if they were receiving bill every month and they had to pay it separately? Maybe that would make them much more, interested in savings. So this is a different setting. It's a place where these are graduate students housing their 1 to 3 bedroom apartment. They live with their family there, and it's about 120 apartments that we equipped with this technology that provides information in real time to the users and with a dashboard. So what we did there is, we went to, the fuse box that's, a lot of us have in our home that says, this is the oven, this might be the light, and so on. So we did plug these different, in the fuse box, we put some sensors. So people would get that type of information about heating, lighting, cool dishwasher, fridge, other kitchen. And then we had a different framing of this information, a little summary. And we had 2 treatments. One about how much money they could save if they were like the most efficient in the neighbor, and then the other one about health. So what is interesting in this complex is that the people rent and they all have the same appliances and same size apartments. So we are really looking at behavior. It's not about, okay, I bought different lights or have a different fridge. It's everybody is on the same page. Same equipment. So here are the 2 different types of treatments we had. We had a control group, again, a group that we observed, but they didn't have a dashboard. So we knew kind of what was the trend. As you know, electricity is very dependent on the weather, for example, and so time of the day. So we had the information about electricity usage every 15 seconds. So we knew everything that was going on in these homes, actually, when they woke up, what they were doing. But we had these 2 different treatments. So one of them was the money kind of treatment, saying, last week you used X%, and that is 29% more than your efficient neighbor. You spent $26 more over 1 year. And then we had the health message that said, last week you used 29% more electricity than your efficient neighbors. Over 1 year, you're adding 456 pounds of air pollutant, which contribute to health impacts such as childhood asthma and cancer. So on that one, we went pretty heavy on the description of the problem that might be associated with this. So if I ask you which one would you think for you would be more effective, which one do you think would be more effective? I'm going to stop for a minute to see if people have and I don't think I can see the hands if anyone wants to say anything, but okay, so Juliana, you're saying money. Okay. You want to tell us why, Juliana, you think money is more effective? Maybe?
For me, intuitively, so being a very human here, it would impact me the most. I mean, although social good, you know, and thinking of others would probably impact in a longer term, but I think at first, to make me, I mean, reduce the intention action gap, I would probably look at the money and think about it right away.
Yeah, and I think you're right, because I mean, that's what people, you know, we did a survey and that's what people said. It said, you know, I want to save energy because I want to save money. And I think it's a very important driver. So Camila and Flavia and Claudia, you're about health. So maybe Flavia, do you want to tell us why health?
I believe because it will catch more my attention. Childhood, asthma, health, it's something different from what I see everywhere. Yes, even if you spend $26 over a year, I think we can see this in other bills, but as when you attach something different and with health, I think would make more, I'm sure it will make more, think more about it. So the way it's written, I believe the second one would work best for me.
For you. I mean, you're right. I mean, the way it's written is going to be important, as you know. So Sebastian, you're saying, what can you tell us? So you're saying 26 over 1 year is, go ahead.
Yeah, well, basically what Flavia was saying. So when you think about 1 year and $26 is almost nothing for a family, right? So, or for a group of 4. And then when you think about the contrasting impact, right? So from one message to the other one is much more loaded towards health and the public good and all the potential harm that you can do to the environment. Whereas the other one is very personalistic and very focused on the individual itself or on the group in this case. So to me is yeah, I mean, the second one, the health one is very powerful, I would say.
Yeah, and I think, you know, I mean, in my opinion, I think both can work. It depends on the context. And I think it depends on 2 things. It depends on how much money. And I think, Sebastian, you're right, $26 over a year is not that much. So that's, you know, it depends on how much, you know, how much money you see there as a private benefit. And then I think the other one can be effective, especially, and in that case, I forgot to mention to you that these apartments are located on each side of the freeway, the 405 freeway that goes through Los Angeles, which is a very, very big, it's like, I don't know how many lines each, you know, 7 on each, you know, 7 for each, you know, kind of way. So it's like 14 lines. It's enormous. And it might be that people also think about health even more because of that exposure that they see, you know, and they have children. Remember, these are, you know, families with children. So I think both can be effective in terms of stated preferences. The survey that we conducted, people say it's money. In terms of the result, what we did find is that health works way more. So those in the health treatment did reduce by 8% their electricity usage, and that's over a 9-month period. Those in the money treatment did not change their behavior, so they did not reduce. Some of them, I think, even increased because they realized something that they didn't know when we did the survey ex ante. They had never actually made the calculation that to be like the most efficient, this is how much work it would take, and this is how much money I would make. And they realized that this is not enough for the effort that it requires. So we could make it more. These are real numbers. Actually, it's based on the electricity price, and so we couldn't make it different than that. So I think to make these 2 equivalent, in terms of motivation, we would have needed to have a higher price of electricity. That's kind of where, you know, what we and these people were particularly worried about childhood asthma and cancer because they live next to a freeway, so they're also more sensitive. So I guess the conditions also are important in terms of what what works and what might work. We did this in India, the same experiment, and this is my colleague Amarjit Singh, who was actually at the initiation of the other project too. And this is an apartment complex in New Delhi for faculty members of IIITD, which is the university where Amarjit is teaching as an engineer. And that's me, so you might recognize me. And so we did the exact same experiment, same thing. And so we were thinking maybe in India, because kind of the standards of living are different and so on, maybe we'll get a different result. So that was our hypothesis. And then in fact, we got exactly the same result as the one we had in Los Angeles, where people actually pay more attention to the health message. And as you might know, New Delhi is particularly polluted and subject to air pollution. So it might have been that people are quite sensitive to that issue, and actually electricity is pretty inexpensive there for that population of faculty members. It's actually pretty equivalent to what we have in the US. So this is what we found, but it's good to see that we were able to do the same experiment in a different context and find results that are similar. There are some examples of companies that have kind of built on this kind of health connection. So that's the Honest Company from Jessica Alba. She's made billions on this idea that especially there are moments in life where we connect more with health issues. One moment I feel is when we start to have children, and that's what she should do here. You have children, you want to make sure that they are not exposed to chemicals and so on. This is the moment that I'm gonna, as an entrepreneur, this is the moment I'm gonna talk to you about this and provide products that are going to be, healthier for your children. So if we think about money, so I just told you money doesn't really work too much in this. I think it depends. Money depends on how, and I'm sure you all know that, how it's framed, and so. When it's framed as a tax, and maybe in this experiment, it could have been framed as a tax rather than how much you could save, how much you're losing in not conserving energy. So this is the example, and there are a couple of papers that have been done on this plastic bag story. But in the US, before plastic bags were banned in some locality, some grocery stores would provide you a 10-cent incentive to bring your own recyclable bags. And just that didn't work too much, because people were like, for 10 cents, why should I do this? It's not too much. I'm not, I'm just not going to pay attention to this. And then they changed. Once they banned a plastic bag, they said, now if you want a bag, you have to pay for it. You have to pay 10 cents. So it's the same amount, 10 cents one way or the other, but sorry, I've experienced it myself. I just now think about the bags way more, and it should not matter because it's just 10 cents, but it's not symmetrical. As you can see, the 10 cents is charged. People tend to be much more responsive to that. So that's the money, and there are different ways to kind of frame money, as you know, but it can be powerful, but it depends on how it's framed. I have a question on, do you see any incentive for people to bring their recycle bag and receive discounts? I haven't seen studies on that, but in some ways, the 10 cents was a kind of a discount, right? It was a discount, but it didn't really work that well. Yeah, there could be coupons, there could be other ways to do this that might be more effective. It's possible. There's shaming that could be also, they tried, I remember when I would come, Whole Foods was doing that. I would come and then they say, oh, you didn't bring your, they looked, they had this kind of look, you didn't bring your recycle bags. No, well, I forgot. But that wasn't as effective as this 10 cents text. So the last in the green bundle is the emotion, empathy. So that's an example where that was what we call the 4-1 model. Tom's Shoes was doing that. You buy a pair of shoes and then you give a pair of shoes to a child in need. It worked pretty well in terms of getting people, kind of interested in Tom's Shoes. It has been criticized since then a lot because, in terms of charitable giving, you're giving a product to people instead of telling them how to, manufacture the product themselves, right? So it has been criticized, but it has been imitated in many different other types of product. This 1-for-1 product, which way you connect to someone else through your purchase of a product. So it's more like a social component here. So I think that's kind of what I have in terms of the different elements of the green bundle, just to show you kind of all those different ways to connect the information that we can provide to people to the actual action, to kind of bridge this intention to action gap. And you can see sometimes information can be very, very detailed about our footprint, about what we do, and might not work. So I think it's really important to think about this, different elements here. So that's what I have. I have, some of the papers that I used to, and I'm happy to send you the presentation. Some of the papers that we wrote on this, and I'm going to stop share, and I'm happy to chat with you about, any of this or anything else you want to talk about.
Thank you for your presentation, Professor Delmas. Everybody, if you have any questions, you can open your mic. We're going to make some questions now, but you can open your mic or send the questions in the chat so we can read it to Professor Delmas. Juliana, would you like to begin?
Thank you, Professor Delmas. The presentation was really interesting. I took my notes to try to reduce my intention to action gap. I mean, my first question will be, I'll divert a little bit on the subject, but we might get back right after. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about the greenwashing that you have also investigated in your studies, which is the false or exaggerated claims on corporate sustainable behavior for communication and marketing purposes. So how could consumers quickly and easily spot greenwashing and segregate it from the legitimate sustainable behavior?
I think it's a tough one because, the concept of greenwashing means, like that the information is not accurate, but it's really hard to figure out, right? So I don't know if you've heard of the Scenes of Greenwashing, this organization that's looked at different types of greenwashing. So it's an organization that was based, they're now not, it's a nonprofit, but they stopped doing this. But they were looking at products and they went to stores and saying, which ones are greenwashing and which ones are not greenwashing. And greenwashing is a concept that's beyond just the company lying to you. Sometimes it could be things like, oh, it's very vague. We don't really know what this means. So they are it's kind of a continuum. And they had this list of what they call the scenes of 7 scenes of greenwashing. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of them here because I think it helps to identify what greenwashing can be or not. So for example, they have what they call the scene of vagueness. So where you have a poorly defined claim like all natural. It says all natural. What does it mean? So what this organization was saying, arsenic is natural. It doesn't mean it's good for you, right? So that's, what does it mean? So, arsenic, uranium, mercury, all that's all naturally occurring, but poisonous. So it's not good. So poorly defined. So that's often what companies do. They're very kind of unclear and you don't really know what it means. Some companies have, kind of labels that are false labels. So that kind of goes to, I think one way to check, whether the company is greenwashing or not is to use it to, kind of make use of third-party eco-labels that are, third-party certified. So it's another organization going to the organization and and making sure that the claim is correct. But a lot of companies, and Johnson & Johnson is an example, have kind of put their own label, and it looks like a label from another organization, but that's their own label. So that's another kind of problem that we might see. It's difficult. Sometimes they have what they call scene of irrelevance. So a lot of companies might say, you know, I'm making a claim, but it just doesn't really matter. For example, phosphate-free. For product that would not include phosphate anyway. It's like if you think about fat-free flour or sugar-free oil, or you know, so some manufacturers of fridges would say CFC-free fridge, but now CFC is banned, so they're all free of CFC, right? So these are the type of things where they're not really lying, but it's really kind of irrelevant. What they're saying is irrelevant. Sometimes they also emphasize one element of the product and don't talk about the other one, you know, kind of, so they might emphasize the efficiency, but not talk about the toxicity, right, of the product. So it's also another way of greenwashing. So basically this organization has all this list of different ways to greenwash. And when we think about greenwashing, we think about what they call fibbing, lying. But a lot of time it's just an exaggeration or being vague, or you know, a lot of other things that are not, they don't really lie, but you know, they make us think something that's different than what it actually is. So to avoid this, you know, there are definitely a lot of things that the firm could do inside the organization to change the, you know, incentives within its organization. But I think something that is really important are eco-labels, right? Third-party eco-labels that are, we can trust, and often when the government, when these are, you know, developed by the government, they might be a little bit more trustworthy. But that's really having someone else than the organization, you know, claiming, making the claim, and having so that's would be one, you know, one suggestion to avoid greenwashing. But it's definitely a big issue, because all of what we were talking about, and that's why I'm going back to what I was talking about before. But it's you know, not trusting the environmental claim is a big deal. And if you have if all these companies are lying, then you know, you're really confusing the consumer, and that's a really big problem that I think we have. And that's one of the excuses I mentioned, and people are right. I trust less and less, you know, companies when I see a claim, a green claim. I have this kind of natural response, like, are you know, is it really true?
I mean, it brings us to the reality that it's not easy to be green, right? I mean, you need to be well informed. It's incredible. So a lot of challenges.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, when I talk about the green bundle, sometimes one strategy is the silent bundle. So let's say, you know, that's the Tesla example. They have a product that's, you know, greener, although it can be discussed, and they know it's not easy to make. No product is really green completely, right? So they say, we're not going to go into this debate. We're not going to enter this. We're just going to talk about the performance of the car, and that's it. The rest, you know, because if you drive you know, an electric car in a country that is using a lot of coal, then you're using electricity that comes from coal, and then you're polluting more than if you are driving the car in a country that's using renewable, for example, right? So there are moments where it's not completely, and you know, everybody's talking about, you know, you know, how do you recycle batteries, all that. So there, you know, no product is going to have zero impact. Products that are better than others, but they still have an impact and can be criticized. So sometimes it's just about actually focusing on the other attributes, the private benefit rather than the environmental benefits, and then you don't get into these issues.
Magali, Ana Claudia makes an interesting question on the chat. Would you say that these strategies, I mean, the ones that you presented, are based on the individual itself and not on his role within the community in which he's inserted?
So that's a good question. In terms, I think, you know, when we talk about status, it's a lot about the norms that are in, you know, your community, and some of these strategies might not work if you're in a community that doesn't really care, right? So for example, the Prius and all of these green cars are, kind of a status symbol in some communities, but in others, you might be looked at like a, like a loser, right? Because you're, so the status is going to depend on the norm of the community. The positive, that's the positive part, and then there's the shaming, which is kind of the negative side of it, but it depends on what, the norms are. So it is very much actually included into the, what the community thinks. And ideally, and I think it's kind of something that, we're seeing now more and more with recycling, which is kind of an issue because of, kind of the complete changes that happen in, with China, not taking some of the recycling, for example, in the US, now people have to think about, but, kind of people have no idea where it goes, they don't really care, the community is not informed and all of that. But if you have a community of people who actually care about recycling plastic and showing the example, it's really very, very powerful, I think. So it is an important element that is related to status. Yeah.
So in those lines, I mean, what would you say is the role of intrinsic versus extrinsic motivation and the role of agency? And by that, I mean, let's say that I would, if I had the availability and perhaps the cash, I mean, the fact that Tesla S is a green card would have some value for me, but which is a bit different than you telling me it's a green car and therefore I should buy it. So it's there is value on my decision and my agency of choosing the green product, and where and it actually is a question or hypothesis when that drive comes from outside or from an external source signaling that to me, I could in a way resent it. Could that be a factor or not?
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen I mean that, with I mean, in general, with the, kind of the political divide that we have in the US, for example. So we've seen a lot of that, of people rejecting this, saying, we are imposing me your culture, your, let me be free. I need to have, to be free to pollute. But what I'm saying is that this is still a minority, I think, of people who are actually resisting just for the sake of resisting. That's what I feel. But on the other hand, we are in this situation of overpopulation, overcapacity, of using a lot of the resources, polluting, all of that, as a result of our individual actions. And so if we just rely on these individual actions and agency, we are continuing on this terrible trajectory, right? So we need to change that course. And so one way is to continue to do what I suggest in some ways as a second, but it's a second choice, is letting people pursue their own private interests and, kind of use some of these levers, motivations to change their behavior. But in reality, the thing that would be needed are two things that would completely change the game, is technologies that are much better, so innovation, and regulation. But if you say you can't use these plastic bags anymore, end of the discussion, right? You're way more effective. Everybody's just, but we are in societies where it's very difficult to do. So second best, we are using this kind of voluntary behaviors, and that's more difficult to do because you're going to have people who are not going to continue to do this. We have the example with vaccinations, right? Mm-hmm. So people resisting vaccinations, and if it's not required, you always will have people who are not doing it. So what I'm showing here is the second best. I still think that regulation is necessary to kind of have standardization and be more effective.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I guess my question was in the lines of one experiment that I saw once, in which a menu was presented to a consumer at a restaurant, and they had like the meat-free or the vegetarian option, and then they have the chef's solution, the chef's recommendation, or the delight of the day kind of thing. And it was pretty much the same dish. I mean, it was vegetarian, risotto type of thing. So when you say it's a chef or is the delight of the day, was much more, the take-up was much greater than when you say that it's the vegetarian one. So that's kind of the bit of the agency. I mean, on the second option, okay, I've been induced by a recommendation, but also I'm making the decision of not eating meat on that day. So that's the...
Yeah, or maybe you are also, I don't know if it could be vegetarian or it could say green option, right? You might think that this option is of a lower quality. So that's the problem of what your prior is about the quality. And you might say, oh, okay, the chef, it has to be, if it's recommended by the chef is a cook, so it has to be good. The green stuff is, it's good for the planet, but maybe it's not good. The taste is not as good. So I think it depends also the priors that you might have of linking greenness with quality. And we've seen that with organic wine. Although, I showed you that certified wine that comes from certified organically grown grapes get higher quality, higher price. What we did find also is that these were for bottles that didn't actually advertise it on the bottle. So you couldn't tell that it was actually green wine. Those that had the label with organic got a price discount. So people were not willing to pay for that. So basically the wineries, what they've been doing is hiding it because they feel like the consumer is confused and associated low quality with these green practices. So I think you're right. There might be some misperception that are, kind of a priori negative, and you need to kind of go around and make people, sometimes it's true. Sometimes it's true that the, vegetarian option is not as good, but it happens, right? And sometimes it's true that the organic wine is just, at the beginning of when the organic agriculture started, there were a lot of trial and errors, and it wasn't as good. So you do have some of these priors that stick, that you need to kind of circumvent if possible.
Okay, thank you.
So I mean, I'm just continuing on this. That something that actually is really interesting as a development is in some of the green, or a sustainable behavior is often gender-based and with a kind of a feminine touch. People think now this is more like women, what women want, and so on. I'm a guy, I'm not, So Schwarzenegger was saying, Arnold Schwarzenegger, was the governor of California after his career as a movie star as the Terminator. He became our governor and actually a big proponent of the environment. And he said, you need to get these big Hummers to be green, to be electrical, and then you need to kind of communicate to the Republican guy, right? And so what happened is that in the last week or so, we had the development of these green trucks, these electric trucks. I don't know if you've seen Biden driving one of them, but basically everybody's saying it's amazing because they're, they accelerate. So it's like the Tesla for kind of truck drivers, right? Its acceleration is great. It's, it's all fantastic and no trade-off basically. And that's kind of, they are trying to get to that part of the population that normally one would see green as a feminine trait and meaning not powerful. So they are now putting power in terms and green together and saying, this is for you guys. So it's interesting on how you can change these, priors and provide some product that might be appealing to those who normally would not look at it.
Brilliant.
Mm-hmm. Perfect. Thank you very much, Magali. Such nice examples and a lot of food for thought, I think, for us here in some initiatives. So one question that we have here is like, when we talk about sustainable consumption, like energy consumption and others, we can talk about two drivers of sustainability. That's innovation, technology, and behavior. Yeah. In this sense, is it possible to insert behavior insights, and if you think it's a good idea, on the innovation process, so we can take the best of technology and people for designing initiatives related to sustainable consumption? So what's your...
No, that's an interesting, an important question. So when we started to work on these technologies, to give feedback to people about the energy usage. So how it started is I was with some of my students who are engineers in my class. As you know, I'm working with this, faculty, and we have this project going on about, and it's amazing. Now we will have these sensors, and we can know everything about every, in the home. We can put them everywhere, and we can know the electricity usage in real time, and that's going to be transformational. And there's this big just optimism from engineers that yes, with this technology you can change the world. And I was like, okay, it sounds great, but do you think that people actually care about that stuff? And when we did the first experiment, we realized that actually, maybe it could have looked better. And at the time, it was pretty nice as a dashboard. We realized that providing information in real time to people about the electricity usage had no effect if you did not, kind of bundle it with motivation and a different framing. It just there was no interest, right? Mm-hmm. So I think it's really important, ideally, to work with engineers from the beginning to test things and see what works and what doesn't, and design products with behavior in mind. And engineers tend to not do that as much, right? So another example, we have all these programs for energy efficiency that are put into place and have zero effect for technologies, zero take. People don't really care about these because they have been designed without thinking about people. They've just been designed like they are good technology. Yes, they will work well, but then you need people to adopt them, right?
Makes sense, logical, rational. If they have all the pros and cons, yes, people would choose, but they take a while to adapt or adopt. And so I think the idea here is how you can use behavior insights, so all those biases and ways to communicate also to the engineers and to the others involved. We were telling here, we have Guilherme is an engineer, so he can give his thought on that. But we can communicate this.
He's a transformed engineer. Looks like. Yeah. But I think we had, so in my classes, I had how to use informational technologies for sustainability, and so I had half engineers and half social scientists, and we, they had to do things like, write a grant proposal to kind of how to use technologies to, for public good. It was a lot of fun. It was a lot of fun.
Great idea.
Yeah, because I think there's just so much to be learned from each side, and the engineers that had good ideas for technologies, but then they didn't really know about experimental techniques, for example, to test, and it's mostly okay, let's give the technology to a few people to try it out, and they didn't really kind of, the test is not designed in an experimental manner to be actually identifying whether it actually works and things like that. So they were very interested in learning about the experimental techniques, and the social science students, were excited about the technologies. So it was a really good. I did that a few years. It was really fun. Yeah.
Well, makes sense, and I would love to know more, because when we do workshops, whatever, actually in all those areas that are financial sectors and other, we have a lot of engineers, a lot of rational people, so we need to prove many times, yes, all those biases. So I think I can see clearly that this makes change if you start like trying to for them to reflect on their own behavior, makes a lot of sense. So great to know. So I think Artur now, yeah.
Yes. Professor, I would like to talk about the future. When we talk about sustainability, we're also talking about the future, which means we have to put kids and teenagers in this equation because they're growing up, they're going to consume and etc. They are a big part of this equation. So I would like to ask you, what's your thoughts on the role of the kids' education for sustainable behavior going forward, especially in the context of inequality, because we have to put the poor and the vulnerable in this account as well.
Well, that's a big question, right? I mean, you know, I think we've seen an awakening of the, you know, kind of younger generation, mostly because they also at school have been kind of educated in, you know, elementary and middle school and high school. And so they come, as I can see, as college students, they arrive on campus and they're already very excited about sustainability, very informed. So I think we have a new generation coming in from all the work that has been done over the years. I can see the interest in our, we have an environmental science major at UCLA. So that's, you know, for students, and my class is oversubscribed, people, more and more people, you know, so students, I think now are just much more educated already. It's like a new wave. This being said, it doesn't mean that their behavior is better than the behavior of the generation before. I would say that they consume more than what I mean. I'm several generations before, but I consume much less than what they consume right now. So it's kind of a little bit like a, you know, intention behavior gap, like, you know, where they complain a lot and they act and they, but in terms of their consumption, they consume way more. So what do we do with that? You know, so this motivation, I think, is useful for maybe to help change some behavior. So I'm going to give you an example. We're currently conducting an experiment where we use teenagers as stewards of the environment to help change the behavior of their parents at home. So as I mentioned, so I've done a lot of work on energy conservation, and what we realize is that the electric utilities and you know, kind of trying to change the behavior of someone in their home is really difficult by just sending flyers and, you know, doing all of this. But so we say, well, what if you train the kids, you know, at school, and then you send them to their home back with saying, you know, this is to their parents, that's what you need to do. You need to be careful about your thermostat, your fridge, all of that stuff. Is that going to be more effective? So I think what the teenagers, now that they actually, I think, have been trained, educated, can be really helping us change. But what I don't know, and I you know, so this experiment, I don't have the results yet. We're putting it together, so I'll tell you when we do. If it's, the hypothesis is that it's going to be more effective than just contacting the parents directly. But the question is how to get this new generation to consume less. And that's, you know, even with the education we gave them, they are not they are not conserving too much energy. So that's a little bit the issue I have, is that the trend we have is like one generation after the other is using more and more and more and more. Yeah, so I'm not sure there what to do, what to suggest.
Young people. Thank you, Professor. Do you have another question from the chat?
We do. We have one from Sebastian. I'm not sure if Sebastian wants to ask, or do you want us to ask on your behalf? Okay. Artur?
Sebastian, would you like to open your microphone?
Oh, I was on mute.
Go ahead.
Yeah, so just going back to, I think it's an amazing approach, the Green Bundle, and it as Flavia was mentioning, and also Guilherme, is giving us a lot of food for thought as well. When you identify the different elements, are any sort of connections or kind of a way to use it as a framework for connecting those different elements for the different contexts or circumstances, for example, that you see?
Yeah.
Well, in this one, yeah.
I think you're right. There are some moments. So there is the timing component. So for example, as I mentioned briefly, there are some moments in life where you might be more sensitive to one element of the bundle, such as health. So if you think, when you have children or when you become sick, you're suddenly much more aware of the impact of, kind of the environment on your own health or the health of your children. So these are kind of, there are moments that one element or the other might more work better. Context also, status might work better if you have, again, the norm around you helping to push, to make sure that you're benefiting from the glowing, kind of impact of being greener, and that people recognize that. So I think, kind of these elements, I have in the book some examples of when it works better, when it doesn't. Also, there's an question on can you use several elements at the same time? Do they actually, kind of work with each other, or are they sometimes not working with each other? So what we see is that quality and status work very well together, right? I mean, so Tesla being the example where it's, it shows that you're, rich and beautiful and, all of this, so that's the status, and that goes with the high quality car. Then I think health and quality for organic products, you could see they are both. Organic products are in general a little bit tastier and maybe better for your health, for sure. What doesn't work very well, I would say, is emotion and money. I would think that, sometimes you might, if you're thinking of spending time in charity, let's say you volunteer, at the library on the weekends, and then they don't give you money, and you do it because it's, you want to connect and you want to help, and then they decide to give you some money, and they pay you an hourly wage that's really low, and you're like, oh, I'm not going to do this job for that little amount of money, but you were willing to do it for free, right? So there are moments where, kind of, as we know, the kind of money can
crowd out
the altruistic motivation. So there are things that work together and things that don't work together in terms of the elements of the bundle, and also there are contexts that's going to be much more conducive to one or the other. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Magali, I would like to sort of follow up on Artur's previous question on teenagers and this next generation. Well, we are in a way headed to a massive climate disruption, for which we need to, in a not so long term, radically change our consumption and spending behaviors. So in this very recent crisis on the COVID emergency, was there something that any sort of lessons learned that can be translated or at least provide insights for how to handle this massive behavior change that we need?
That's another really difficult question. A very, very super important one. I think, it's super, important. I think what we learned from this COVID situation is that we had to make sacrifices, and we realized there are things we did not need that we now, maybe, so that maybe is an opportunity for a restart on some of the habits that we've lost and we don't really need. Some of it, kind of in terms of clothing, in terms of, there's so many kind of material things that we didn't use for a while. So that might be a good way to, kind of think about what is really important. for some people. I think a lot of people are just looking at the future with different eyes, but maybe that's not, at the same time, you see also people now just binging on the things they didn't have during that time. So, you know, like traveling like crazy when they, you know, vaccinated, or going to, you know, parties. And so there's these two things where we realize we don't really need it, but then now we kind of crave it. So you know, there's what they call the pent-up demand, or after all of this time that people have spent in isolation. So I don't know, I feel like we've learned that it's possible to use less, but then people immediately, when they have the capacity or the ability to go back to normal, that's what they want. So I don't know about this. What we found is that when the governments, when it's for health reasons, they are willing to, I mean, it trumps everything else, right? For health reasons, they forgot about the economic cost of it. It was all about health as a primary driver of some of this. There was no cost-benefit analysis conducted in a lot of what has been done. And so that proves that, you know, when there is will, they can do it, but they can, you know, so how do we get them to want this? So we need to be in a much dire situation for this to happen, and to have this climate to be at the forefront. I mean, there is hope, though, with Biden being a little bit more, you know, better than the previous president. And so I think that changes a little bit the kind of the worldview of what the US can do. I'm not super positive and optimistic on climate change in terms of our ability to constrain ourselves. I'm much more optimistic on the ability of our engineers and, you know, to kind of find the technologies that will help us mitigate the effect of climate change. So I think we won't be able to stop the process, because we'll never be able to agree on limitations. You know, countries are not going to get agree, but I feel like on the technologies, we will find ways to adapt to the situation, and that's the adaptation is, I think, a better bet. So it's not super positive, but I think it's just going to be really difficult for people to agree on mitigation.
Yeah, but mitigation, however, will be probably much more unequal than just preventing, as we are seeing with the vaccines, with
very
the
unequal
balance of vaccines in the
problem. So maybe we're going towards a world of even more drastic differences. Maybe that's where I don't know, but it's going to be about adaptation. Right?
Yeah, pretty much.
When will you get China and the US to agree on this? I mean, on reducing their carbon footprint, it's going to be, yeah.
But they say they will do it. They didn't say when. Right.
And how, right?
Yeah, exactly. Professor Delmas, as we are heading to the end of our meetup, I just want to invite Claudia Pires. She would like to make a comment. Claudia has an amazing work here in Brazil, uniting behavior insights with positive social impact. So, Claudia.
Okay, thanks a lot, Artur. Thanks, Professor Magali. It's wonderful to hear the good news and the bad news, because I mean, I've been dedicating my life the last, I would say, 11 years to sustainability. But I just want to share a case, because I mean, I love when you said that, you know, you do the public good with private benefits. We did a small case here in a retail store, and then people would bring their recyclables. It was a cosmetic store, so they would bring their recyclables, and then they would get like points, and then the points would give them some benefits. And they had 3 different benefits that they can choose. One was donate their points to an NGO with, you know, elderly cause, women cause, and child cause. So you have like 3 options to donate your points. Then the company would donate money to those causes. So you have just to donate your points. And the second thing that you could do is to take discounts, like 5% discount to buy another product from the store. And then the third choice would have, you know, to change for a training course on how to do your makeup. And then when we were posting, you know, at Instagram and Facebook, you know, the 3 options that you could do with your points, the most, you know, liked and shared was the donation one. But at the end, the most extended one was the discount.
So again, the difference between stated preferences and actual behavior. Interesting.
Yep. And actually it's like, I mean, I'm doing a public good, but I'm getting a private benefit. It was amazing. It was like 7 weeks. And then we were, wow, everyone was loving the, you know, the donation. And then actually, I mean, everyone decided to go to the discount. And then, I mean, one was like 1 week before, you know, finishing the case, we were saying to the people, and then, I mean, they run to donate, but it was like, you know, like scarcity. You just have like a week to do it, and then, I mean, they decided to donate. So okay. That's I just want to share the case.
Oh, that's great. Have you written something about this case? Because this is really interesting.
No, I haven't. I'm pretty bad on, and I have all the numbers, and I wouldn't have, you know, like how I was going through the weeks, and then how I was going through, you know, what people were saying, and then actually what they were even doing, you know, like the numbers on the social medias, and actually the numbers because we had a technology that helped us to know, to see the entire journey.
Let's do it. Just to make a public compromise. You can do it.
That's it. I tried. If I do it, I make sure that you receive it.
Yeah. Okay. No, I think it's super interesting. Very, very interesting. Yeah.
Thank you, Claudia. Professor Delmas, thank you so much for joining us. Thank you for your time, your great presentation, your food for thought, as Flávia said. Thank you so much. I can't thank you enough. I was thrilled to have you, and it surpasses all my expectations.
Thank you so much for the lively discussion, for the examples, and for allowing me to kind of, you know, speak with you guys. I think it's amazing we could do that. That's, you know, that's a great initiative that you guys have put together. So yeah, congratulations, and let's keep in touch. And if you have comments or anything, you know, or if you want to chat, I'd be happy to.
Thank you so much. Definitely our pleasure.
Bye. Let's keep in touch then. Thanks a lot, Magali.
Bye-bye.
Thank you, Professor Delmas. Pessoal, muito obrigado pela presença de todos. Espero que tenham gostado. Eu adorei. Mês que vem temos novamente. Já estamos aí praticamente acertados, mas vamos manter o suspense um pouquinho, né, pessoal?
Verdade. Mas temos um convidado legal vindo aí. Né, gente? Boa noite, então, pessoal.
Obrigado a todos.
Boa noite, pessoal.
Obrigado.
Valeu.
Tchau, tchau.
Bye, bye. Boa noite. Tchau, tchau, gente.
Tchau, tchau. Boa noite.
Boa noite.